she gives us the strength to find wisdom and grace during our own challenging times. Dr. Fred Luskin is the director and co-founder of the Stanford University Forgiveness Training and Research Project. He has conducted a number of conclusive scientific studies that attest to the healing power of forgiveness. As you know, Northern Ireland has witnessed years of religious and politically motivated violence that has caused needless tragedies to individuals, families, and communities. And during forgiveness training, one young man spoke of the loss of his father. He was a young boy when his father was shot, and he grew up with only his mother and brother. And he knows that the only reason his father was killed was because he was a Protestant. And as a result, this man developed an intense hatred for Catholics. It was a hatred that to a large degree dissolved during the training, for the man learned that Catholics who had lost a family member grieved as much as he had. The fact that people who have seen family killed in a bitterly divided society and learn to forgive should give us all hope. And it kind of puts things into perspective, you know, with the neighbor's slight about your dog in the yard, doesn't it? There's a story in the book, Small Miracles, Extraordinary Coincidences from Everyday Life. It's a story about 19-year-old Joey who leaves home and turns his back on his Jewish religion. His father was extremely upset and threatened him with total rejection if he didn't change his mind. Joey didn't. And communication between father and son ended. The son wandered the world to find himself, met a woman, fell in love, and for a while he felt as if his life had meaning and purpose. And years later, he ran into an old friend from his hometown in a coffee shop in India. And his friend said, "I was so sorry to learn about your father's death last month." Joey was stunned. It was the first he'd heard about his father's passing. He returned home and he began to re-examine his Jewish roots. And he traveled to Jerusalem and visited the Wailing Wall. He decided to write a note to his deceased father, expressing his love and asking for his forgiveness. After he wrote the note, he rolled it up and he tried to fit it into one of the holes in the wall. And in the process, another note fell out of the same hole and landed at his feet. He reached down and he picked it up, and curious, he unrolled the note. The handwriting looked familiar, and so he read on. And amazingly, the note was from his father, asking God to forgive him for rejecting his son and expressing deep, unconditional love for Joey. Time and again, we hear stories in which the process of forgiveness wipes clean the slate of a painful past. And Joey's story indicates that not even death can stand in the way of this process. In recent years, research has shown a relationship between forgiveness and health. Dr. Gerald Jambalski has been an MD for more than 40 years. In his book, Forgiveness, the Greatest Healer of All, he describes patients with a variety of symptoms from back problems to ulcers to high blood pressure and even cancer, who have had many of their symptoms abate as they learn to forgive. Study after study of the Stanford Forgiveness Project has found that forgiving is good for the body as well as the soul. It can also reduce levels of depression, anger, and anxiety. And people who forgive generally have more and better relationships with others and feel happier and more hopeful. Studies reveal that people who blame others for their troubles have higher incidences of illnesses such as cardiovascular disease and cancer. People who imagine not forgiving someone show negative changes in their blood pressure, muscle tension, and immune response. But when they began to imagine forgiving their offender, researchers noted an immediate improvement in the forgiver's cardiovascular, muscular, and nervous systems. Let's practice for a moment the possibilities of what imagination can do. Step into the silence with me. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Open your heart. And in your mind's eye, imagine yourself standing in front of you. Take another breath. And repeat after me. May I be free from fear. May I be free from suffering. May I be happy. May I be filled with loving kindness. Now shift from yourself to someone you care about. Take another breath and open your heart and imagine that person standing in front of you and repeat after me. May you be free from fear. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. May you be filled with loving kindness. Now I'd like you to do it again for one more person, one whom you dislike or don't get along with. Take a deep breath. Open your heart to the similarly wounded one who stands before you, and repeat after me. May you be free from fear. May you be free from suffering. May you be happy. And may you be filled with loving kindness. Take another deep breath and let your heart open. And come back when you're ready. You can open your eyes and feel the shift in energy in this room. That is the power of forgiveness. This Buddhist prayer or meditation is a powerful tool to help heal, let go, and to spread loving kindness. When you find yourself complaining about that colleague or family member, when you find yourself whining to your friends for sympathy, and when you find yourself wallowing in self-pity, think about that person with as much kindness and compassion you can muster, and do that meditation. And remember that no matter how extreme the circumstances, compassion is possible. Within your heart lies your seat of power. Seek to work from your heart space at all times. Somewhere in there, if you stay open, you may find some suggestion, hint, or intuition that will lead you toward looking at that person and the circumstances differently. Some of you, while doing that meditation, may well understand the need for forgiveness, but it may still be too much of a stretch for you emotionally. How do you get to that place of forgiveness and love? It's pure grace for some and really hard work for others. Dr. Phil suggests that you start by writing a list of the people that you need to forgive, the ones that keep you plugged in to the anger and resentment. The choice for forgiveness waits for you until you're ready. But know that you will meet that person again or someone like him or her, no matter where you go. For forgiving the particular issue that he or she represents in your life is the lesson your soul needs to learn. Life can take us down a path that we don't want to be on or ever plan to be on. And yet, some of the greatest gifts in our lives are often ones we would never have picked. A job loss, major illness, the loss of a child, divorce, bankruptcy, single parenthood, a catastrophic accident. But as we journey through the valleys of life, remember that it's in the valleys where growth occurs. In his forgiveness training, Fred Luskin tells all participants that disappointments, hurts, and wounds occur in all relationships, in stable long-term marriages, in loving families, and among good friends, and I dare say even in churches. And because of this truth, all relationships give us an unlimited opportunity to practice forgiveness, to take less offense, and to prevent conflicts from escalating. It's only our woundedness that stands in the way of making peace with each other. Dr. Phil says the power of forgiveness is the power to set yourself free from the bonds of hatred, anger, and resentment. Seize the power and rise above the pain. You're worth it, and everyone you love deserves it. The choice is yours. While it doesn't come easily, it's well worth the effort. And I'd like to illustrate this point with a personal forgiveness story. Several months ago, I set my intent to speak about forgiveness. And it is said that we teach what we need to learn. And when I set that intent, the universe brought up some unfinished business of my own that I was finally ready to deal with. I made that list of people that I needed to forgive, and at the top of the list was my mother. We never really had the kind of mother-daughter relationship that I had hoped for, or the kind that I treasure with my own daughter. Working full-time, mothering 6 children, married to an alcoholic, suffering with depression, and a pattern of keeping herself emotionally and physically removed from her family for varying lengths of time, made it very difficult to really know who my mother was. And after almost 30 years, my parents divorced, which divided the family even further. And despite my many efforts at reconciliation, we have been estranged for 20 years. There was a part of me that wanted it to get better. And there was another part of me that had just stopped trying. And for a long time, I waited for her to make the first move. But you know what happened? The weeks turned into months, and the months turned into 20 years. Several weeks ago, I decided to sit down and write my mother a letter. And in many ways, it was like I was writing a stranger. But I wrote several pages describing the past 20 years of my life, and I expressed a desire to have her in my life again. I mailed it with no expectations, but some reserved hope. 1 week later, I got a response. I recognized the handwriting on the envelope before I even opened it. The past 20 years of her journey have been very challenging. She's 80 years old now. She's had 3 heart attacks, 2 angiograms, and 3 stents with angioplasty, and really needs a triple bypass. But she's not a good candidate for surgery. And I don't need to tell you what that means. Her unlisted phone number was written on the bottom of the card. I didn't know what I was going to say to her, and it took a few days before I mustered the courage to call her. But when I did, she was delighted to hear from me, and we spoke easily for half an hour. Part of me was anxious to schedule a visit with her, but she told me that she'd call in a week, and as difficult as it was, I had to honor her reasons. In the meantime, I went through boxes of photo albums and memories and started assembling a photo album of my mother's life. And then I sat down and I compiled a gratitude list of all the lessons and gifts that my mother had taught me. And it was surprisingly very easy when I put my mind to it. The more I wrote, the more the wellspring in my heart filled up with memories big and small. I laughed and I cried, but I was filled with an incredible peace when I was done. She eventually called, and we arranged to meet outside of Toronto at a large bus terminal. I wasn't even sure if I'd recognize her after all these years. She's older and frailer, but she's still my mom. And of all the places she wanted to go, she wanted a Tim Hortons coffee. And so we sat for the next 4 hours in the food court at the large mall near the bus terminal, and we talked. I had the best conversation with my mom that I've ever had in my life. And she told me things about her life that I hadn't known about. And as I listened to her story, I realized that she did the best she could at the time. And for whatever reason, she wasn't capable of giving more. I now know that it had nothing to do with me and that I couldn't take it personally anymore. There's a great line in that baseball movie, The Natural. The woman says, "I believe we have 2 lives. The life we live with, the life we learn with, and the life we live with after that." Once you let go of what you wanted the past to be, you can start changing the present and create a better future. Life is so short, and love is too important. It's never too late to forgive. I don't know how much time I have left with my mom, but I can tell you that those 4 hours were worth the 20-year wait. Forgiveness is the most important lesson that we all have to learn. And I wish you peace and joy on your forgiveness journeys. Amen.